The movie begins with a damaged man arriving at the police station. The man's name is Hahou Mo, and he practices kung fu. The police inquired as to what had caused Hahou Mo's face to be pummeled and covered in blood. Hahou Mo then explained that he had accidentally killed a boxing master and came to the police station to surrender himself. 3 years later, the scene shifts to a gathering of police officers on the road, where an accident has occurred. Not long later, a woman named Luku appears, as does Soon, one of the police inspectors. Inspector Luke was then invited inside to assess the victim's condition and the scene of the accident. After being identified, Inspector Luke determined that the victim was a former martial arts master who had been purposefully killed with bare hands. The killer also left a trail in the form of an iron object shaped like a swallow sculpture. The scene shifts to the penitentiary, where Hahou Mo is seen massaging one of his co-workers. But soon a group of other prisoners arrives and chases them off. Hahou Mo, who did not like the ruckus, decided to give in and relocate his seat. Suddenly, he saw the murder news on television and appeared to know who the culprit was. Hahou Mo quickly approached one of the police officers and volunteered to assist them in catching the perpetrator. He also requested to meet with Inspector Luke. Nonetheless, the police officer ignored Hahou Mo's statements and took them as a joke. This upset Hahou Mo, so he ended up hitting all of the detainees to get the guards to listen to him. Following the event, the prison finally contacted the investigators and summoned Inspector Luke to meet Hahou Mo. The authorities inside the prison were taken aback by Hahou Mo's attitude because he was renowned as a disciplined and well-behaved prisoner. After successfully meeting with Inspector Luke, Hahou Mo quickly stated that he knew the killer's true aim. Hahou Mo claimed that the killer was a martial arts master who planned to slaughter all other martial arts professionals in order to become the best. Hahou Mo also volunteered to help the police catch the killer in exchange for his release from prison. Inspector Luke and the detectives, however, found all of Hahou Mo's justifications to be implausible and absurd. Nonetheless, Hahou Mo did not remain silent, mentioning 7 persons he suspected would be the next victims. However, Inspector Luke elected to leave Hahou Mo since he did not believe what he stated. The picture then shifts to a guy carving a swallow sculpture. He is the murder suspect whose case is being handled by Inspector Luke. Hahou Mo's words proved true when the murderer met a man named Tom King Mu, whom Hahou Mo had previously described. King Mu proved to be one of the top martial arts masters, famed for his tremendous kicks, but he retired 10 years ago to pursue a career as an artist. The murderer announces himself as Fu Nusa and instantly challenges King Mu to a duel to the death. The battle between them breaks out immediately. As time passed, their combat became more intense, but Yusa appeared to be in command. Despite King Mu's powerful kick, Yusa beat him by emulating his fighting style and eventually killed him. Before leaving, Yusa remembered to leave the iron swallow sculpture he had placed on King Mu's chest to represent his victory. On the other side, the police eventually received a report of King Mu's death, which was caused by the same person based on the traces left behind. Inspector Luke believed what Hahou Mo claimed, so he returned to see Hahou Mo in prison and informed him that the individual he described yesterday had died. Unexpectedly, Hahou Mo learned that King Mu died from a hard kick, which matched the police identification. Hahou Mo then says that the killer Yusa can defeat all martial arts professionals by fighting them according to their talents. The next day, the police released Hahou Mo on parole at Inspector Luke's request to assist her and the investigating team in solving the serial murder case. Inspector Luke then questioned Hahou Mo regarding the killer's next destination. Hahou Mo advised Inspector Luke to travel to Mongkok because he was confident that the criminal would go there to arrange a duel with martial arts specialists. Not long after, Hahou Mo's prophecies came true when the police got another complaint of a murder in Mongkok, this time involving Wang Chit, whose name Hahou Mo had previously named. When Hahou Mo and Inspector Luke discovered Wang Chit's body, Hahou Mo immediately examined the wounds to determine what had happened to Wang Chit. Hahou Mo also imagined that the killer exploited his opponent's wrestling abilities to overcome Wang Chit, a talented wrestler. Yusa may even change some of Wang Chit's bone structure, causing him to die. When Hahou Mo had just finished analyzing the cause of Wang Chit's death, he happened to see the killer, Yusa, who was still nearby. So Hahou Mo instantly attempted to pursue him. Unfortunately, Yusa escaped Hahou Mo's pursuit by desperately jumping from the top of a very tall structure. After that, Hahou Mo, now free from prison, came to the hamlet to meet his wife, Xin Ying, and the two reunited after a lengthy absence at a market near their home. When Hahou Mo returned home, he was surprised to find a note and an iron swallow sculpture addressed to himself. Hahou Mo immediately asked Xin Ying about it, and she said that a man with a limp around 30 years old had visited to their house a few months ago to give it to him. However, because Hahou Mo was in prison at the time, the man was unable to meet with her, so he left the object to Xin Ying, who ended up keeping it elsewhere. Yuso remained mute and remembered hiding his memories of his wife, who turned out to be unwell, prompting Yuso to become a murderer. The next day, Hahou Mo and his wife visited a historian to learn about the significance of the swallow sculpture. He stated that during the Qing dynasty, kung fu specialists convened in Beijing to compete, with the loser receiving a swallow sculpture from the royal department as a sign of honor. The historian inquired as to why Hahou Mo was interested in it. Xin Ying, who was already aware of the truth, responded promptly, stating that there was a serial killer who always left the swallow sculpture at the scene, and that the culprit had a weak leg. Hearing this, an elderly colleague of the historian admitted to Hahou Mo that he had been defeated by the same person 6 years prior, and that person had also left the swallow sculpture for him. The old guy also stated that the person's name was Yuso, and that he suffered from atrophy, which caused the lengths of his legs to change, causing Yuso to walk with a limp. However, Fun Yuso conquered the sickness by practicing martial arts diligently and gained remarkable success. After receiving this critical information, Hahou Mo quickly contacted Inspector Luke and informed her everything. Inspector Luke immediately investigated and discovered the location of Yuso's residence, so they went directly there. However, when they arrived, they discovered Yuso's absence because he had long since fled the location. Not long after, the woman who owned the place informed the authorities that Yuso was unemployed and a burden on the family, so he opted to train kung fu with his cancer-stricken wife. The woman also said that one day she witnessed Yuso taking a bath with something weird until his body bled, and that Yuso and his wife chose to leave after paying 6 months' rent to the woman. They then resumed their quest for Yuso and were about to meet a sword martial arts specialist who would become Yuso's next target. However, when they came, the martial arts master appeared to be all right, because he had quit using a sword due to an accident 2 years ago. Yuso, who was already aware of this, then attacked Han Yip, a disciple of the sword martial arts master, and killed him again with a little cutter knife, leaving the swallow sculpture as a symbol of his victory. Hahou Mo and the police failed to arrest Fun Yuso again, jeopardizing Inspector Luke's status as the case's investigator, and Hahou Mo would be returned to jail. Meanwhile, in the police station, the investigators discovered a new clue when everything uncovered at the site was a perfect match for Yuso. They were especially astonished when Yuso called the police station and requested to speak directly with Hahou Mo. Yuso then stated that Hahou Mo should always be prepared to confront him, and he threatened to murder Hahou Mo's wife so that Hahou Mo could become a murdering machine like him. Inspector Luke suspects Hahou Mo, believing that he and Yuso may have had a relationship while he was in prison, and that Hahou Mo is Yuso's boyfriend. Inspector Luke's suspicions were confirmed, and Hahou Mo had been in contact with Yuso since a few months ago, while still in prison. After gathering enough information, the police headed straight to a location believed to be Yuso's home. When they arrived, Inspector Luke and the others discovered no evidence of Yuso's presence. The cops promptly planned and established positions to ambush Yuso. The next day, Yuso was seen on a boat, celebrating his wife's birthday. The scenario then flashes back to Yuso's past, when he killed his wife on purpose because he didn't want to see his wife, whom he adored, suffer for the rest of his life. The scene returns to the present and depicts a normal situation. Nonetheless, Yuso senses the impending danger, recognizes the undercover police agents, and attacks them one by one. Yuso killed the police officers without compassion. On the other hand, it turned out that the investigator in Yuso's position received a recording from prison concerning Hahou Mo, who had encountered Yuso while in prison. Inspector Luke and the police decided to arrest Hahou Mo, assuming that Hahou Mo and Yuso were working together to get him out of prison. Hahou Mo and his wife have now become the police's chase targets. However, it came out that Xin Ying had already left to battle Yuso, so that her husband would not fight beside him. But Hahou Mo realized this and went insane, hunting for his wife, forcing him to fight the police. On the other hand, Xin Ying threatened Yuso, stating she would destroy the ashes of Yusaw's wife's corpse if Yusaw continued to fight Hahou Mo. Yusaw, on the other hand, was unconcerned and meant to murder Xinying, so they began fighting right away. Despite her exceptional fighting skills, Xinying was no match for Yusaw, who eventually vanquished her by placing a blade in her arm. Not long after, Hahou Mo arrived at the fight scene and was surprised to see Xinying die while Yusaw escaped. Hahou Mo then phoned the police to save his dying wife, while he planned to go after Yusaw. Yusaw, on the other hand, was able to flee Inspector Luke's and the police's chase by driving his boat into the police's boat. Hence, Inspector Luke was pronounced unsuccessful in apprehending the serial killer. Shortly later, Hahou Mo called Inspector Luke and admitted to having met Yusaw. Nonetheless, Yusaw's motivation for meeting him was to challenge him to a fight to the death and determine who would become the world's #1 martial arts expert. If Hahou Mo refused, Yusaw would murder his wife. Inspector Luke was eventually deported as a result of her negligence in doing her responsibilities, and she was replaced by a new investigator. In contrast, Hahou Mo chose to kill Yusaw. Inspector Luke, on the other hand, refused to give up and went straight to see Hahou Mo, knowing full well that Hahou Mo would fight Yusaw. The image then shifts to Yusaw abruptly stopping a truck in the middle of the road, revealing that the driver is Hahou Mo. The two instantly start a furious battle. Although they appear to be equal in strength, Hahou Mo appears to be more powerful and capable of overwhelming Yusaw. They both launched a variety of powerful attacks, but despite their desire to kill each other, there was no cheating or dirty techniques involved. Yusaw eventually gave up and confessed defeat to Hahou Mo, Asia's #1 kung fu master. Yusaw even asked Hahou Mo to kill him. However, Yusaw's remarks caused Hahou Mo to realize and become unwilling to fight, leaving Yusaw disappointed in Hahou Mo. Yusaw attacked Hahou Mo again until, in the middle of the road, he was dragged by a truck, his back was gravely hurt, and he passed out. When Hahou Mo awoke, he discovered Yusaw dead next to him, having been shot by Inspector Luke. The movie concludes 3 months after the tragedy. Hahou Mo appears to be in good health and has been going about his daily routine in prison. Not long later, Inspector Luke called, and Hahou Mo was judged not guilty, thus he was unconditionally released. After that, Hahou Mo returned home and eventually established a kung fu school with a large number of students. The moral message we may take away from this film is that greed produces nothing. Thank you.